Greetings and salutations, everyone! My name is Fire Mage, and welcome back to Rimworld Ascension Take 2, Episode 86. If you enjoy this episode, please remember to like and subscribe, and as always, mod list is down in the description. And with that, let's get on to the episode. Alright, well, picking up from where we left off last time, you might notice that, well, we're not picking up where we left off last time. And that is because I am technically recording episode 86 for the second time. As the previous episode 86, I fully recorded it, and then realized at the end of it that my microphone was not plugged in. So all of that footage is worthless. But I'll give you all a brief rundown of what happened. First of all, we have a new mod, Industrial Citadel, giving us access to some big emplaced guns, which we are going to use. The nuclear fallout ended after our usage of nukes, after around 2 to 3-ish in-game days, so it doesn't last too terribly long. We had a bunch of infections happen, cleared that up, and finally, we researched all the stuff needed for Industrial Citadel and have begun working on building our own Citadel. See, after the last few large raids, I have come to the decision that we are going to, instead of having all of our buildings separate like this, begin connecting them up into one large facility. As you can see, we have already started on that down here, connecting up here, 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 and here. And this will become the first bit of our Citadel. Once these walls are built, we will begin reforming everything on the inside. Admittedly, it's going to be a little difficult, as I'm trying to build something around and within our already existing structures, but if all goes to plan, it should be not too bad. And that is where we are going to be starting today. Our constructors are working on the last of the repairs to the vehicles, and of course, building up all of these walls. Although, it may be a good idea to start by deconstructing all these sandbags. And there we go, the last of our planned walls are complete. At least until we can deconstruct the sandbags, and it would seem that our constructors are digging up the graves. Very good. We are going to simply turn all of these corpses into fuel. As much as I liked having a graveyard, I kind of need the space that they take up more, so it is an unfortunate loss. Also, something I forgot to mention earlier is, as you can see, Wiggy is dead. Yeah, Wiggy died last episode right over here. He was mining out some rocks and got crushed. It was unfortunate, entirely my fault though, so sorry so it's unfortunate, but it happens. Now, one of the first things I want to do, as our people continue working on this, is determine where to put some more power generation. One of the coolest parts of the Citadel mod is this, the stationary chem fuel generator, which will generate 5,000 watts of power. And that is so important because that is half of what a nuclear reactor can put out, and it's a lot easier to get chem fuel than it is uranium. And also, admittedly, I'd rather turn all of our enriched uranium into more nuclear bombs. Especially since we're going to have a fully enclosed base here soon. Makes sense that we would also be able to fully utilize that. Now, the only problem with the stationary chem fuel generator is just that, the word stationary. Once this is built, it cannot be moved. And as you can see, it's not exactly small. Now, I was originally going to simply make a very large amount of them somewhere in the center of our future Citadel. But then, I was thinking, why do that if we could instead decentralize it just in case something happens? Kinda like how we currently have our nuclear reactors spread out across our base. And in line with that style of thinking, we are going to put our first one right over here, where these 4 generators are. Let's go ahead and grab a couple of constructors to deal with that. And once those are ripped out, we will build our very own stationary chem fuel generator. But we're not just going to build a stationary chem fuel generator, because we are also going to build a fuel tank right behind it. That way, it'll have its own fuel supply if it somehow gets severed. Alright, there we go. Generators are deconstructed, and now let's build the generator itself. I think we'll have it at this orientation. I think that looks pretty nice. And then the chem fuel tank itself. Actually, I think we'll need to move this back slightly. Here we go. And if we move that back slightly, that means we'll need to bring this up slightly. But that shouldn't be too much of a hassle. Well, while we wait for more concrete to be produced, let's take a little look in our large mech gestator and see what I want to make next. Now, we have quite a few options here. I think, though, we are going to go with the Pristine Assembler as our next large mech. German, if you could please get to work on that, that would be lovely. And since we're waiting for more concrete to be built so that we can finish making the stationary chem fuel generator, let's go ahead and get to work on these rooms over here. Now, there's not too much I can do right here other than a little something like this, making these rooms just a little bit bigger. It's kind of hard to work with an L, but, you know, that'll work well enough. Then for the mech room, this one is actually going to be quite nice, as I will be doing this, which will open it up significantly. The only thing we'll have to do is move the door. And once that door is moved and this wall is deconstructed, we will have a significantly larger room for our robots. Now, as for the nuclear reactor, I can't exactly deconstruct it yet. It still has a year's worth of power in it, so we will simply be moving the cauldron up here into that room and then kind of just walling it off, I think. Like so. Do a little something like this. And then we'll just put a temporary door here and here. Bring this wall up one. Deconstruct right here. And that'll give us a little bit more space in the warehouse once again. And there it is. Our very own stationary chem fuel generator. And let's set that fuel level to the max. And on top of that, we also have upgraded our warehouse. It's a lot better organized now. The tailoring area has been expanded, and of course, the Mechanoid workshop has also been expanded. And how much fuel does this thing have? 2 years worth of fuel in reserve, on top of the chem fuel tank, which holds a little under double the amount of fuel. Not too bad if I do say so myself. Now, luckily, we don't actually need to do any maintenance on the chem fuel tank itself, only on the actual generator, which means we can do this. As all we need to do is have just enough access to get in here and make maintenance checks. So with that finished, we are now going to get to work on some of my other ideas. Now, originally, I was going to make these two into battery rooms, as you can see. Pretty obvious. But instead, I have a new idea. So we're actually going to move all of these batteries out of the way, as my idea is we are going to be turning these into extra housing, specifically barracks. That is one thing I did learn after our unfortunate fight last episode, where we had to use nuclear bombs, is when we get large amounts of people coming to stay with us, we didn't really have any space for them. So we will be converting these into just that, so they don't have to sleep on the floor, essentially. It's not that much of an improvement over the floor, but it is still an improvement. So hopefully they won't complain too terribly much. Alright, and now that the batteries have been moved, let's get to work on designing this barracks. Now, being a barracks means that I'm not going to be giving them pretty much any of our fancy stuff. It's going to be very basic, very bare bones. Essentially just beds in a room is what I want to go for. As many beds as we can kind of physically cram in here. Which it seems like isn't going to be a lot. Especially if I want to keep some aesthetics, which I do. So, unfortunately, these will each only be able to hold 4 beds, which is still more than we could before. And then we'll put a dresser in each of them, like this. And there we go. So we'll have 2 little side rooms in case we need to give people some extra housing. And I suppose, while they're not in use, we can set them to guest housing and essentially replace our cheap rooms with probably slightly better cheap rooms. Unfortunately, that still runs into the problem of us having a grand total of no concrete right now. Ah, well, now isn't that interesting? We have a combat supplier passing by. Well, I certainly won't say no to a combat supplier. Hopefully, they have more reinforced barrels. We need a lot of them, as I have found. Pretty much all of the permanent turret bunkers I want to build all take the reinforced barrels, and we're going to have to build a lot of them, because we have to actually test them and see how effective they are. But while we contemplate that, let's go ahead and buy up all their medicine and components. Let's see, do they have anything good? They do have a gene pack of just pack mentality. I do want that. I've been trying to get it for a while. So we'll definitely be grabbing that one. Let's see, they do have more reinforced barrels. Very expensive. Ouch. Hold on a second. It's saying we have no money. That's not right. We definitely have money. But it's outside the orbital trade beacon. Ah. So we can't quite afford that. But I think if we sell them some of our stuff, we might just be able to afford it. Alright, so if we sell off just about everything we can only lose 3,922 silver, which is most of our money. But we did get 7 more reinforced barrels, I guess. And we also got the pack mentality gene pack, which I have been dying to get my hands on, as that one is one of the ones I was trying the hardest to get. And previously, it was stuck with Night Owl. So, and previously, we did have it, but it was stuck with Nocturnal and Chest Fur. So, quite glad we no longer have to use that one. You know what? Since we lost both of our war caskets, I think it's time for us to get a new one. Specifically, I'm going to be making Ra into our next war casket. That means, Ra, I'm going to need you to get into the war casket machine. Once Ra has been war casketified, we'll worry about those health issues. But let's get to work on this. Now, Ra is a Neanderthal. Neanderthals are already incredibly durable, but it comes at the problem with shooting. They suck at it. Now, Ra is pretty skilled in shooting, a solid professional, and is also a solid professional in melee. However, Ra also is way more passionate about learning how to stab people. So, that is what we are going to lean into, as we are going to be making Ra into a Shock War Casket. Now, the Shock War Casket, I believe, is very similar to the Aerial, only it benefits from getting up close into melee. It gets, I believe, about 100 jumps, which is pretty cool. Not too sure what it means by jumps, but more importantly, if we look at the shoulders, they get melee dodge and melee hit chance modifiers, making them absolutely terrifying in melee combat. Now, unlike last time, let's actually give this one a little bit of color instead of just making them gray. Seeing as our flag is red and black, like my channel icon, I think that is what we are going to go with. And I think we'll go with this. It's not quite accurate, but it's close enough. Now, the only problem is that we need 50 uranium, and we have 5. But luckily, I do have a solution. There is a lump of uranium ore just up here, and that is what we are going to go for. Also, wow, there is a lot of raiding parties surrounding me. I don't like that. Now you might be asking, how are you going to mine? You have a grand total of no one skilled in mining. And that is where my genius plan comes in, as we are going to send German, his military squad, and of course, the tunneler. Alright, German, you are going to be driving. In terms of food, we'll send a little bit of chocolate. And I think that's about it, yeah. Then we'll send him off. 1.2 days. Not the fastest vehicle, but it'll work. And German and the robots have arrived at the map. However, it would seem the map is a little bugged. There we go. And it's fixed. And now all we need to do is tell our robots to get to mining. Well, while our robot was digging, I found this map's wreck. And guess what it was? The Big Rig. Which, if you will recall, was one of the things I wanted, because it can carry so much more cargo. And I believe we have most of the parts we need to actually build this thing. Yeah, looks like we have most of the parts we're gonna need. Although, just to be safe, I am gonna tell them to build more of these parts, just to err on the side of caution. And with those builds set up, let's load up the Mosquito. It's gonna be pretty heavy, but I think it will work if we send a couple of trips. And of course, we will need to send someone who is good at construction. Let's send Carrie, why not? And yeah, we're gonna have to make a few trips for this, but if it works, it will be well worth it, as we will have our very own Big Rig. And there he is. Ra has been interred into the War Casket. Let's let him get his mood up a little bit. He is suffering a lot of problems. And while he does that, it is time for us to take a little look at our weapons, and we don't have any melee weapons for him. But we can get him one. Let's go ahead. Ooh, we can make a broadsword or a gravity hammer. Yeah, I think we'll go with the gravity hammer. It sounds quite a bit cooler. So let's get to work on building one of those. While we are loading up the helicopter for its final flight, it has begun snowing because it is winter. I don't like the snow. It's going to screw up my crops. So here's what we're going to do. We are, for the first time ever, going to attempt to use season time skip. And here's hoping it doesn't do anything too terribly bad. Carrie, go ahead and skip the season. And it did a something. And it's lagging my game, that's for certain. Oh, what is happening? Oh, whoa, it's actually speeding up time. That is so cool. Oh, but it is so laggy. Also, how much longer is this going to go on? It's already skipped over winter. Is there a way to stop it? Or is it just going to keep going? And it's finally stopped. Okay, so we have learned very good to use, surprisingly safe, but also incredibly laggy. It is now the 9th of April-May instead of being the 9th of December. That was certainly something. But it is now warm out. It's still snowing, but the snow is melting as soon as it hits the ground, so that is a win for us, I'd say. And it is done. Our very own big rig. Unfortunately, I forgot to fully load up on fuel, so we only grabbed 80 before we came here, but that should still be more than enough. Now let's begin loading up all that uranium. And while we do that, we will be sending Skypines back home on the Mosquito. And the other two will simply drive on back. So, Feller Rose, please begin load... Oh, you can't. That's right. German, I know you're on the verge of a mental breakdown, bud, but can you quickly load the big rig, please, before you have a mental breakdown? There we go. Big rig loaded, and let's send those guys off on their return journey. And now that they're on their return journey home, I think I'll be leaving this episode off here. We have made a lot of progress. We have restored half of our previous war casket count. We have acquired a big rig, which is awesome. And of course, we have continued work on the Citadel, which technically I didn't start last episode, but I did start it last recording. Again, audio issues, forgot to plug in a microphone. But we did make a lot of good progress on that. Warehouse has been expanded, so has the tailoring workshop, mech workshop, and now we have our very own stationary chem fuel generator. Next episode, we will probably be continuing work on this. I still need to figure out how I'm doing walkways. But with all that said and done, though, I will see you all in the next episode.